Welcome to the Gold Standard here on the 440 Sports Network, of course, brought to you by Lower Broad Hockey and Sinkers Beverages. We will get to what's going on over at the website this week coming up soon, but playoff hockey is here. That is Emma Lingan. That is Michael Gallagher. I am Braden Gall. How are we doing this morning, folks? How are you?
Doing great.
I was waiting for the resident energy bug to really like kick off things here. So yeah, we're doing great.
Sinkers Beverages, of course, is our great sponsor. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. We've got some line insight into what Andrew Burnett might be thinking from a line standpoint. The power play, of course, was very interesting over the first week of training camp. We'll get to that. We've got a talking point I discovered yesterday at practice, guys. It is very clear the message that the coaching staff is delivering to its players. There's one that I've got from 3 separate players on 3 separate occasions that is very clearly what's being passed on to them by the coaching staff about the focus of this training camp. So we'll get to that. I had a couple of games, not sure what we learned when none of the good players were playing or none of the stars are playing in that series. A couple of prospects getting some extra work with the coaching staff. I had a chance to talk with Luke Schenn and Luke Evangelista, and McCarron and Colton Sissons were made available, and so we'll kind of give you some thoughts from the first week of camp. However, Sinkers Beverages, folks, 3-time liquor store of the year as voted on by you, the Nashvillians, in East Nashville. Make sure you check them out. Follow them on the socials. You got Sinkers Bev on Twitter. You can follow them on Instagram as well. That's where you can find out whether or not they've got some really excellent drops, as the kids say, allocations, bourbon, all kinds of specials on wine as well. So if you need something, go check out Sinkers Beverages. Join the In Crowd, which is their sort of customer appreciation group. That's where you'll get private access to like events, tastings, again, special allocations, etc. If you're a bourbon fan, I can't recommend that enough as somebody who likes bourbon. And of course, search Uber Eats, search Sinkers Beverages. They'll deliver the booze directly to your house. The prospect guide is up, Michael Gallagher, over at Lower Broad Hockey. What can folks find in that prospect guide? Everybody go sign up, subscribe, lowerbroadhockey.com.
You can find 17 pages of my blood, sweat, and tears that I redid 3 different times because they traded Yaroslav Askarov, who is featured prominently in the first 2 pages of that prospect guide. But it's all good. We swapped him out for Zach LaRue. You can find my rankings 1 through 25, mini scouting report on prospects 11 through 20, and then a full-blown in-depth scouting report on prospects 1 through 10. I think we said on the podcast last week, Tanner Molendyk is the new number 1. I think few would argue that, but everything else 2 through 10, I think it varies slightly from my prospect rankings from last year because I'm a little bit higher on some guys. We added in David Edstrom and a couple others, Andrew Gibson. But yeah, go out there, go download it. I think I don't say it's the most comprehensive thing that's ever been done on Predators prospects. There's some people that do some other good work too, but
no, say it is definitively number 1, the most comprehensive work.
I'm trying to be humble here. Okay.
No, we're trying to sell subscriptions, Michael.
I will say you will not find anyone who worked harder in the last month on a prospect guide than I did. I'll just put that out there. But yeah, lots of good stuff. If you love prospects, go read it. There's pretty much anything you can possibly want to know on everybody in the system. Yeah. So
all right.
Enough. Good job.
There you go. You can download the PDF. It's awesome. Go check it out. We'll have lots of coverage for you guys coming up as well. I'll tell you more about that in just a second. Emma, your newsletter, of course, you can get that every single Friday. I want to ask you a question. Is there anything that we need to know about the rest of the Central Division as you work on sort of the NHL's perspective and looking around the league? Week into camp, is there anything that Preds fans who don't pay attention to the rest of the Central Division need to know about what's going on around the league? Putting you on the spot here.
Yeah. Colorado and Dallas are still very good. So I would say that, any kind of maybe hope that they may have taken a step back. I don't know that anyone had that hope, but just in case they did, still really strong, look really good. Specifically in Dallas, the Predators poached Scott Wedgwood, but then Dallas went and picked up Casey DeSmith. So they're still doing pretty well in the goaltending department. And then, Colorado still got Nathan McKinnon, still got Kale McCarr. So they're always going to be a problem.
So I think something else to put in there too. I mean, you don't have to worry about this until 2026, but it was reported this morning by The Athletic that Kirill Kaprizov wants to end up in Chicago. So in 2 years, that might be a problem.
Yes.
Oh, that does line up with their timeline too. Like not this year, not next year, but the year after. Maybe
You have a prime Connor Bedard and all those prospects rounding into form, and then you add Kaprizov. Like that's gonna suck if that actually happens. So brace yourself, Preds fans, because if that happens, like Chicago's gonna be even more insufferable than it already is.
Yeah, that's not imaginable. All right, so I got a chance to talk to. This was not on purpose. I just need you guys to know this, that it's not on purpose that I ended up talking about Tanner Molendyk and Luke Evangelista on my first trip out to training camp. That did not happen on purpose. That is
He's
just
lying. I was there. It was
That
totally planned.
is complete bullshit. I wasn't there, and I'm calling bullshit on that.
I was going to. I'm working on a story about expectations. And,
when have you ever passed up a chance to talk about Tanner Molendyk?
Valid, not tough, but fair. But however, it was at the end of a conversation with Luke Schenn that I was like, "Hey, I got to ask. I heard this story about you practicing with Tanner Molendyk and the veterans on the team practicing with Tanner Molendyk, and some stories about the veterans players' responses to practicing with Tanner Molendyk." And I heard some stories about that, so I wanted to ask one of them directly. And sure enough, he gave me a great story. I'll tell you about that later. But it was completely an accident. I needed someone who'd played in the Stanley Cup final and someone who was a very young player last year. It turned out that the Lukes worked out well for the story that I'm working on. So it was not on purpose. It just worked out that way. I promise you. I will not talk about Tanner Molendyk or Luke Evangelista next time I go out there. If you want to jump into the comments, please do so. You can do that on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe, turn on notifications, rate, review, subscribe on the podcast app as well. We do appreciate it. Make sure you go to Sinkers, follow them on the socials as well. And all that stuff I'm working on and that, Michael, you've got as well. You can catch that over at lowerbroadhockey.com. You could also catch our new Monday series, myself and Adam Vingan doing a show every single Monday. That's going to be for subscribers only. This one will always stay free for you guys, but subscribers only on that one. That'll be out every Monday. We're going to take questions from you guys on Sundays and move on. All right, let's get into some hockey here because we got a whole week of camp to talk about. And the first thing I noticed, and we'll get to the power play lines and some of the line combinations, which I know people are excited to talk about, but I just wanted to get y'all's opinion because it's very clear. Like Colton Sisson, Michael, you were there. Colton Sisson said this about his phone blowing up, and then Michael McCarron had said this as well. And then privately, when I was talking to Evangelista, he said the same exact line. And so when you get three quotes verbatim from the players, it is clear that this is the message the coaching staff is delivering. And it doesn't mean a lot, but it makes sense. On paper, it's fantasy hockey. That is the line that they all uttered yesterday, separately and independently. On paper, it's fantasy hockey. On paper, it's fantasy hockey. So all standard stuff here, but it means they all recognize how exciting it is, the opportunity they have with the talent they have on the roster. And it's very clear that the coaching staff is trying to get across to them. This doesn't mean anything, guys. It's on paper. It's on paper. It's on paper. Y'all got to go out and do the work to put it all together. And Emma, to your point about Colorado and Dallas, those are teams that have gone through a lot of growing together to get to the point where they are today. This team sort of has to do it faster. And that's clearly the message that Brunette is delivering to the team early on in training camp.
Well, it's the exact same message word for word that Barry Trotz gave to the media on the first day of training camp. So I think that it all kind of rolls up under the idea of, let's manage our expectations. I think that's what it says to the media and to the outside world. It's like, let's just manage our expectations. Getting these off-season acquisitions is great. It, again, on paper, it's great. And so I really think Barry just kind of zhuzhed up his old line from last year, or from the beginning of the summer, where he said, it looks great on paper, but we don't play the game on paper. And now he's added like, oh, it's fantasy hockey. It's the exact same message. So I think it's a message to the fans and to the media to say, temper your expectations, but it's a message to the players to say, hey, now you got to put the work in. We've gone out and done this for you. We've gone out and got these big guns, and now you have to put in the work to actually make it happen.
Yeah, I think in a couple weeks, well, in a couple months, let's say when the season starts, I think that Trotz, I don't want to say he might regret using the fantasy hockey term, but I think the fantasy hockey term is going to become his competitive rebuild. Like David Poile, every time after he said that, he had to answer for, is it still a competitive rebuild? I think when the team's struggling, people are going to be asking him, hey, is it still fantasy hockey? If you have 2 40-goal scorers you add to your lineup and they're not producing at a 40-goal level, I think it's going to be, hey, is this still fantasy hockey? Like, I think it's something that It's going to become annoying over the next couple months hearing that phrase over and over. But I mean, he is right. Like on paper, they have a really good team. On paper, this team should compete for a Stanley Cup final appearance this year. That might be a little hot take-ish considering where they were last year. But when you add 2 40-goal scorers, especially one the caliber of Steven Stamkos, and then you go out and you add a top pairing defenseman like Brady Shea, like that is the expectation at least to get to a Western Conference final. But I still think this team can compete for a Stanley Cup final this year. But again, on paper it looks good, but you don't play games on paper. And look, you have Stamkos and you have Marchessault coming in to a new system. You have Andrew Burnett, who plays this fast-paced, offensively aggressive, puck-chasing system. And I don't have any questions of whether those 2 forwards can fit into that and do that. But as we saw last year, it took more than half a season for this offense, for this team last year to figure it out. Everyone that's been on this roster has a leg up on the new guys because they already have a year in the system. But if you're looking at it, you have two new guys that you're relying on to score a bulk of your points this year, coming into a new system, getting used to a different head coach. There's going to be growing pains. We saw it last year. There's going to be growing pains this year. So I think Barry is right, kind of temper the expectations a little bit because it's going to take 10, 15, 20 games or so for the offense to click, for everyone to gel and the chemistry to become apparent on the ice.
Yeah, and everybody has talked about the response within the group chat. Like Luke Schenn basically said, yeah, the group thread was exploding and, social media was exploding. Colton Sisson said, I had to refresh the old Twitter, which is hilarious. He just keeps getting more old middle-aged dad by the day, which I appreciate as a middle-aged dad.
I find it funny that instead of just like texting Barry Trotz and being like, hey, did we sign these guys? He kept refreshing Twitter to see if the news was true.
But it's clear that there was a lot of internal excitement. It's not just external. It's not just media, national media, fans. That players were fired up about this, and in the moment, like it's happening, and they kind of experience it somewhat similarly to the rest of us.
Which that in itself, when is the last time we can point to and say that players on this roster were excited about something that the general manager did? It's been about 4 or 5 years.
That's valid. That's a valid point. Jeff clearly tempering expectations as well in the comment section. Let's effing go. Got my tickets. Can't wait till October 10th. Way to temper expectations, Jeff. Good job, buddy. No, if you want to jump into the comments, ask questions, please go ahead. I am going to play a clip from Michael McCarron, sort of setting some off the field, off the ice, off training camp conversation with McCarron yesterday. But power play, got to start with this as we move along here. First line in practice, Forsberg, Stamkos, O'Reilly, Marchessault, and Josi on the first power play unit. That's sort of what, Michael, you've been saying you want to see all along. And then you have Tomasino, Evangelista, Novak, Nyquist, and Shea. So a couple of observations here before I want to hear what you guys have to say about those lineups. Number one, I think I would argue that is the most talented first line power play unit the Preds have ever had pretty easily. I don't think that's even a debate. I think you could argue it's the most talented second from a skill standpoint. It's one of the most talented second power play units the team has ever had. And if that's the case, and if you're even having an argument or a discussion about those two statements, this is already in the running as the best power play unit on paper. Back to the fantasy hockey thing. It is the best power play unit this team may ever have. We got a long way to go to figure out if that actually happens, but I don't know why you wouldn't be ecstatic about 90 seconds of that first unit and 30 seconds of that second unit almost every power play. That is salty and talented and explosive and unlike anything I've ever seen in a Predators uniform. Am I wrong?
No, I think the one thing that makes me, and this is not, in contrary to your point about talent, because I think you're absolutely right. The one thing that surprised me a little bit, though, on that second unit is Brady Shea being there. And I only say that because Barry Trotz's whole message at the start of free agency was that he wanted guys to have specialized roles on special teams. He didn't want guys, kind of pulling double duty as much as they were last year on the penalty kill and the power play. And to me, Brady Shea is like the ultimate penalty killer. So it surprised me a little bit just to see him on that second unit on the power play. Again, could just be seeing what you have there. Ryan McDonough quarterbacked that unit before. He's obviously not here. So that could be it. So that was just like the one maybe kind of surprising observation that I had.
Let me ask you, does that mean you would want to see him on the top line with Josi or not at all?
No, I personally, I don't mind seeing him on the second unit. I think if he is going to be on the power play, that's where he belongs. But I'm just saying it kind of goes against what Barry Trotz said earlier in the summer about I want guys to be power players or penalty killers, not necessarily both. And so to me, if you're going ahead with that strategy, then Brady Shea would be an obvious PK guy and not a power play guy.
I know. I hear what you're saying. My follow up or my response to that would be, well, isn't he clearly the best defenseman for that spot though? Like, isn't he clearly better than everybody else that they could put into that spot? And so, 30 or 45 seconds on a power play after the first unit goes out there, not asking a lot of him, but he's like, there's nobody else that fits in that spot, right? That makes them better on that. Like, you're not going to put Lozon in there, or I mean, maybe Carrier, but like, I don't know who you put in there that's better in that spot.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's more of just again, I don't really have an answer to that. I'm just saying it surprised me to see that after what Barry Trotz had said.
Okay. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I understand Emma's point, but also, I mean, Brady Shea was a pretty effective power play defenseman for the Hurricanes. I mean, he had, I think it was 12 power play points last year. He also had 13 goals, 47 points. So he's pretty good at being an offensive defenseman when you need him to. And I think it's more, I think putting Shea on the second power play is more out of necessity than anything else, because out of the rest of the Preds defensemen, I mean, who else would you trust out there to quarterback a power play? I mean, the only other defenseman I think that has similar offensive upside would be Dante Fabro. And unfortunately, he just doesn't have the skill set to kind of be the guy that the power play unit runs through.
I just don't think you can afford to take him off the unit. Like, and I hear what you're saying, Emma, and I hear what Barry Trotz is saying, but at some point, an individual player might be too good to fit into that mold, and like he could do both. And again, to Josh's point, as he says here, maybe like Adam suggested, they'll do all first unit all the time, so he'll have limited power play time. To me, it's like a 80 seconds for the first unit, 40 seconds for the second unit is sort of how you want the split to look, I guess, maybe.
Listen, I'm not disagreeing with anything that you're saying. I am just playing the role of Barry Trotz right now, saying that this is not what he said originally. It was just an observation. I don't disagree, though.
I'd also like to point out it's training camp. This may not be what the second power play unit, in fact, looks like when the season starts. It may be what they roll with in the first game, and then it might be a disaster, and then you might see someone else out there. I mean, I think realistically, it makes sense. You for your power play to work, you want your best offensive defenseman and your 4 best offensive forwards. Tanner Molendyk, power play 2 quarterback. Yeah, honestly,
Josh, what are we doing?
You're on it, Josh. You're on it, buddy.
Honestly, you know what? That wouldn't be a bad idea. But I still
in like 3 years, not now.
I still think Shea is the best option, because Shea, yes. I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on Brady Shea as a points producer and a goal scorer.
Hey,
I'm not saying that Emma is. I'm just saying I think other people are.
Emma, stop sleeping on Brady Shea. Why do you hate Brady Shea?
I had a front row seat to Brady Shea in Carolina because that's where I was before here. So I am high on Brady Shea. I was playing Braden's role of devil's advocate, which I will never do again.
The whole point of this show is to explore topics and to have conversations and to kind of go into the weeds on this stuff.
Again, I'm in agreement with everything that's been said here. I don't have an answer for you of who would be better in that spot. I
would like to throw a suggestion out there. People, I might catch hate for this, but if you're not going to put Brady Shea out there and you want a defenseman, Mark Del Gaizo. Just saying.
I don't hate that. I don't hate that.
Okay.
If you can't tell, like, I'm really high on Mark Del Gaizo making the roster this year. I've loved what I've seen from him out of camp. I loved what I saw from him last year in the 9 games that he played. I think, like I said last week, he's the only Milwaukee Admiral who I feel like is NHL ready right now. And if Spencer Stastny is injured and he misses the beginning of the season, there's a very real chance Del Gaizo could be on this roster opening night. I would not hate seeing him on the second power play unit, because I think he's another one who is underrated as an offensive defenseman.
Well, I do want to there is some news and notes out there, right? Stastny, of course, has been was last week, but personal reasons, but he was on the roster. That Predators made 5 cuts down to 58. Excuse me, earlier this week. He's still on the roster, but there's no real indication as to when he'll be back. Again, personal reasons there, we don't know. Jonathan Marchessault, of course, was not there because of his jersey retirement in Quebec, and he explained that his mother had passed away, so there's some personal issues there with him. Svechkov is week to week. Excuse me. Schaefer is out. Svech, what? Svech, what was that? He was out last week, and then he, I guess, re-aggravated it. I guess we'll see.
Can't wait to see the screen grab from this episode with this picture
there,
right here of us all losing
there
it.
You go. You guys are children. You guys are children. Act your age, you two. Come on.
Hey, you said I'm the resident young person here.
That's true. That's true. Jeff, to make a more serious point here, Jeff says Luke Schenn, power play 2 quarterback. Okay, no, all right.
That's a serious point.
It's I'm being sarcastic.
I would like to point out that as Luke
Schaefer
Schenn,
also out.
As Luke Schenn walked up to talk to Braden yesterday, he walked by me. No mean mugging this time. Maybe I'm forgiven, or maybe he just doesn't know who I am, and I just caught him looking at me at a bad time.
He was a perfectly nice person. We chatted about our kids and how we're going to keep him off social media.
He's a very pleasant person to talk to.
He's a great guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Luke specifically, and part of this is, and you'll get all of this in the story coming up, but part of this was I wanted to know how they're all dealing with the noise, because they've all alluded to the fact that their phones are all blowing up and exploding in the group chats and social media and all this stuff. And I was like, well, is there a strategy, a plan? Is it person by person to just manage the noise? National media is going to be coming in for interviews all this time. This is very similar to PK Subban. And so I was curious, and Luke Schenn's like, yeah, I'm not on social media at all. It serves no purpose for me. I don't benefit from it. And then so immediately, as soon as we got done talking, I was like, how old are your kids? And like, mine are basically the same age. And we're like, are you prepared for the battles that are coming with your kids and phones? And he's like, no. So we got into it. He's a perfectly lovely guy.
If you are a recently drafted NHL prospect, listen to Luke Schenn. I can't believe I'm saying this, but listen to Luke Schenn. Stay off social media. It serves you no benefit.
I completely agree. Evangelist had a slightly different take on that.
The problem I've found is, even with the guys who try to stay off of it, or who do stay off of it, the problem is their friends and family do not stay off of it. And so anything that's said gets sent to them. So they're going to see it anyway. And so it's
like the Reddit war with Braden, where he thinks that I have a burner account on Reddit. And I'm like, no, people send me stuff because people talk about our show on Reddit. And
many people are talking about us.
Yeah, people say some not so nice things about us sometimes, and I have friends that are in the sewers on HF boards and Reddit, and they send me screen caps like, hey, someone called you an asshole. And I'm like, you know what? That's just part of the territory.
Tanner Molendyk's dad is a big fan of the show. He's in the comment section.
I had a particular Predators player last year who, I will protect his identity, but he actually reached out to me and texted me at one point during the season. He was going through some rough times, so that could be a few people, but
is he currently on the team?
I can neither confirm nor deny, but he texted me and said, like, hey, I just wanted to say thank you for saying nice things about me on Twitter or on social media.
So that's why she said nice things. Okay. All right.
But I was like, first of all, are you name searching? Because you of all people should not be doing. And I was like, second of all, like, you don't have to thank me. Everything I say, anyone who knows me, knows my work, knows the show, knows that
nothing's personal.
But also that I don't fake anything, and I'm going to tell you how it is. So I'm not going to blow smoke up someone's ass just for the sake of it. So I'm like, anything I say is genuine. But also, don't be name searching. Why are you of all people on social media? And he was like, well, like my brother sent it to me. And I was like,
yeah, no, it's a good point. Evangelista said the same thing to me. Basically, like, look, everybody's they have their own approach. Everybody has their own approach to how much or how little they're on there. And that's totally okay. But that his focus is make sure the only thing that matters is the conversations inside the building. And those are the only things. I mean, again, it's all kind of like standard operating procedure when it comes to answers, but it is the right approach. So don't listen to anything that's said on social media. Is probably a smart strategy for all humans in the world. The one thing it's almost like it looks too good on paper to even have a conversation about how good it could be, the power play, because it's just not even close. From a talent perspective, first and second lines, it's just not even comparable to anything this organization has ever put on the ice at any point during the entire history of its franchise. That being said, the one thing that was of note, and Colton Sissons called himself the uncle of the line, and there's two different lines here that have Philip Tomasino on them very prominently, which is the second power play unit, and of course the third line, which is Sissons and Evangelista and Tomasino for now. And to y'all's point about it's just camp, it's just a week of camp. I do love Jeremy K. Gover taking a victory lap on It's All Your Fault. Shout out, It's All Your Fault. Go listen. It's great. You and Emma and Gover doing a great job. But like taking a victory lap on the fact that the second line already looks great with Tommy Novak, and the third line looks great. It's like, guys, it's 1 week of practice. The Tennessee Titans offensive line looked great in camp as well. But it is absolutely of note that Philip Tomasino signs his contract and in 1 week is on the second power play unit and on the third line as a skill option alongside Colton Sissons and Evangelista. What do y'all make of Tomasino's role early on in camp? Does it tell you anything, or is it just trial? What do we make of this?
I think what it tells me is that this is the year. This is do or die year for Philip Tomasino. Either he makes it and he sticks, or his ass is out of here next year. It might not even be next year. If he underperforms, he could be gone by the trade deadline or before. But I think what it also shows me is that Andrew Brunette is, I don't want to say making a concession, but I think he's willing to try Tomasino in some spots that last year he absolutely would have been terrified to put him in. But I think he's putting him out there to trust him, because eventually it gets to a point where he has the potential, and you're never going to know if he's going to reach that potential if you don't put him in the areas and the spots to succeed. So I think by putting him on that third line with Evangelista and with Sissons, which by the way has arguably been the best line of the Predators throughout camp. Again, it's just camp, but that has been the top performing line that we've seen from them. And I think putting Tomasino on the second power play, it just makes too much sense. When you have a guy that offensively talented, and especially when you have other offensively talented players like Evangelista, Novak, Nyquist, Shea on the second power play unit, like that's putting him in a position to succeed, and you're also giving him a chance to prove himself. I think that's my big takeaway. Like they're basically saying, okay, you may not have been happy with your role last year. We're putting you out there, and like you have to go prove to us that you earned the spot. Because if you don't, there's Parsonen, there's other people that are right behind him ready to take his spot. And I think this is Andrew Brunette saying like, okay, go prove me wrong, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us would have argued that this was going to be the do or die year for Tomasino regardless. But now we're just kind of seeing that play out in camp.
And why not give him the best chance to do and
not die?
So here's the thing, like Forsberg, Stamkos, O'Reilly, and Marchessault on the top. That's the four most talented offensive players on the team, forwards. Tomasino, Evangelista, Novak, and Nyquist are the next four most talented offensive weapons on the team. From a skill standpoint, like especially if you want Colton Sissons and McCarron and Cole Smith to be killing penalties like you do. So I think it's clear that those are the 8 most talented forwards, and to give him the opportunity is very interesting. And I agree. It's the do or die sort of, let's figure out what we've got here once and for all. And the third line is interesting because Colton Sissons will sort of drive play in like I don't know what the right word is, because it's not like an offensive way, but it's just a consistent, dependable, predictable way. And I think to have 2 skill players who can find space and make things happen in space and are very good, handlers and shooters of the puck, it's interesting. I'm interested to see what it looks like. And that also means through all this conversation that Tommy Novak is now your number 2 center with Stamkos and Marchessault, which is a big time talent upgrade for him. And also in a position to succeed on the second line.
I think in the same way that it's kind of like, okay, Tomasino, go prove yourself. It's the same thing with Tommy Novak. I think he was at a point last year where you had to re-sign him. He was too talented, and you saw too much potential to just let him go to the free agent market and have someone else sign him. But I think the debate is he a legit top 6 forward? And at times last year he looked like it, and at times he didn't. I think this is like, okay, you're probably never in your career going to play with 2 more offensively talented players than Stamkos and Marchessault. If you can't make it as a number 2 center this year, you're not going to make it as a number 2 center at all.
And I will add that, again, just camp, but like in my observations of that line with Novak centering Stamkos and Marchessault, the role or the moment does not look too big for him. Like he looks like he belongs there. Again, it's still early, but it's not like, oh, look at these 2, titans of hockey around this guy who's like, looks like he's floundering out there. It's like, no, they actually all look, and he got high praise from both Stamkos and Marchessault. They called him an elite passer, saying like he is a guy that has kind of flown under the radar. And I really do think that they can do for him what Ryan O'Reilly did for Philip Forsberg last year. And I think that to the point of the Sissons line, just to go back to that for a minute, I think that's a line combination that we never really thought of, because I think everyone was so focused on, okay, how do we get Luke Evangelista into the top 6? There's no room for him up there. Yes, Braden was leading that charge, but it was like, how do we get Evangelista into the top 6, and where's Tommy Novak going to go? But I think it was something that we just always kind of looked at it as a foregone conclusion. If you bury Luke Evangelista on the third line, then it's going to be bad for him, or it's going to impact him negatively. But I think that this is something that we never really considered, that if you put him with another skill guy in Tomasino, and then have Colton Sissons, the ultimate third line center you could ever have, I think that really could kind of spread the wealth a little bit throughout the lineup. And that way you're not relying on your top 6. Andrew Burnett has said before, he doesn't like to have a top 6. It's really more of a top 9. And so you kind of have that now.
And the good thing about that too is you don't have to have Forsberg and whoever your other 2 top line forwards are. I mean, they may switch up eventually. You don't have to have those guys playing 25 minutes a night. Now you can have them closer to 20. You can have the second line closer to 20, and you can have the third line closer to 15 to 18. Like you don't have to put as much pressure on your top 6 to perform when you have a third line that's capable of doing what Tomasino, Evangelista, and Sissons can do. And also, like, if Luke Evangelista is not going to be in the top 6, the best possible situation is what he's doing right now on the second line with Sissons and Tomasino, because that's probably going to maximize his offensive skill set.
I agree with both of you, but for it to be one of the best power plays in Preds history, for the third line to work, and for it to be maximizing Evangelista's skills in that position, it all requires Philip Tomasino to be his best self, to do the doing and not the dying, is what's going to have to happen there, and that's still a major question. Like, I agree, he is more skilled offensively than the rest of these guys, and in theory, packaging him with a skilled forward winger on the outside of Sissons, who's, again, the greatest strength is sort of his predictability, his consistency, his dependability to be in the right place at the right time on both sides of the ice. That it all still hinges on Tomasino being his best self. So it doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but that is still a question that we don't know the answer to as it pertains to that. Either way, though, it's been an interesting week and a half. Any other observations from camp itself, just from practice or the lines or the games? None of the star players played. I don't care about the record or the scoring. Seeing Stamkos score on a power play was fun.
It was fun. One thing I will say about camp goes back to our tempering expectations. Zach LaRue has been taking quite a few line rushes with with Cole Smith and Michael McCarron on that identity line. And that is the line where we had all kind of slotted in Parssinen. Doesn't mean that Parssinen isn't going to be there. It also doesn't mean that Zach LaRue is going to be on the NHL roster, or that he should be on the NHL roster. It's kind of goes back to Mike's point from a couple weeks ago, which was you're trying to figure out who's the next guy who gets called up if something happens. And he doesn't necessarily, Zach LaRue doesn't necessarily look out of place on that line.
I think his game fits well down there.
Honestly. It does.
Yeah.
But that also doesn't mean that he's ready to be in the NHL right now. So
yeah, this is basically whoever fills that fourth line role. If they get injured 5 games into the season, is Zach LaRue capable of coming up and gelling with Cole Smith and Michael McCarron on that line? That's what they're looking for right now. And I think from what we've seen, I think the answer to that is yes. I mean, it may not be sustainable over a 10-15 game period, but at least right now, that's how it looks. One other thing I'll add out there that I put in the group chat on Lower Broad Hockey yesterday, just my personal observation. Like I really like what I'm seeing from Ozzy Weisblatt, and I know we've detailed his journey, on Lower Broad Hockey in the story I wrote about him, and we talked about him on the podcast a couple times. But I mean, he's been up against it basically since he got drafted. He gets drafted, first round pick, then he deals with the COVID year, and then he's in the junior leagues, then he's playing in the AHL, then he's with the Sharks, and they're a black hole where talent goes to die. So I mean, the kid is but the deck has been stacked against him, and I think he's really found a home in the Predators organization with the Admirals, and I think he needs consistency. And he's got 2 coaching staffs that love everything from what they're seeing about him, and I like what I've seen from him on the ice. And I would not completely rule out, although I think it's like a 10-15% chance at this point, him making the opening night roster in that fourth line role. I don't know. I don't think he outplays Parsonen for that job, but I do think he's someone that the Predators coaching staff is really high on, and I think he's someone who they're going to give every opportunity to, and I think he's someone that it wouldn't be surprising if there's an injury and he's the first guy that gets called up based off of how he's played, how he's fit in with the team, and things that he can do on the ice.
It does feel like when you look at the groups, they start when you've got 65 players or whatever. They start in sort of 3 even groups, right? A, B, and C, and they practice separately for those that don't know. And it sort of seems like you're spreading out the veterans and the young players to sort of figure out what you got, and then you make some cuts. And you're down to 2 groups. And then it feels like you're starting to see the guys who are further away from making the roster end up in one group and the veterans all end up in the other, which again makes sense because you want the guys who are going to play together to be playing together. I know that's crazy. But you're starting to see that with the 2 groups already. All right, let me ask you then some roster questions here because...
I mean, to that point, too, also, the Group A and Group B yesterday, Group A was pretty much the guys that are on the NHL roster right now. Yeah. And then the guys that are working in with those guys, you have Del Gaizo, you have LaRue, you have Parsonen. Who else was on there? Weisblatt, Wilsby.
Weisblatt was there.
Wilsby's another guy that I don't think he makes the opening night roster, but I think he's one of the first guys called up if there's an injury on the blue line. So that kind of tells you those 3 or 4 guys that I just named right there. That kind of tells you who they're looking at, who they're giving a little bit of an extended run with the NHL roster now, because those are going to be the guys that they're going to want to get up to the NHL probably if there's an injury or if someone gets traded or whatever. If there's a spot that opens up, those are the guys that are first in line.
So. Yeah, I agree. Does it?
I also want to point out Kemmel was in Group B. So for everyone that is Joakim Kemmel to the NHL, he's not ready.
Where was LaRue yesterday? He was in the Group A yesterday.
LaRue was in Group A too. Yeah.
So let me get so Juuse, Parsonen, Philip Tomasino. If Spencer Stastny was out there, he probably is with Group A at this point.
Yeah.
Del Gaizo and Weisblatt are those? And I guess you have to, because if you're putting Tomasino on the 3rd line and you're putting either Parsonen or LaRue on the 4th line, Jankowski's the odd man out at that point. So. It like Weisblatt, Tomasino, Parsonen, LaRue, Del Gaizo, and Wilsby, and well, I was gonna say like who are the names battling for like what is it like 2 starting spots and maybe a 3rd bench spot, and you got 6 names kind of battling for 3 spots. Do you guys have any thoughts on what that like? I still think Parsonen and Tomasino are the 2 guys that make the team. That does leave LaRue and Jankowski out, but it could leave him on the active, could leave him on the NHL roster. And then defense, we don't know. So are we down to like 6 guys for 3 spots? What are we here for? What do we got?
I agree with you on Parsonen and Tomasino. I think you have Jankowski on the roster, but he's probably on the bench. And then on defense, I have Del Gaizo making the roster.
Yeah, I agree with everything Emma said. If you're going to carry an extra forward, it doesn't make sense for it to be LaRue or anyone, because it does them no good to sit on the bench and play once every 12 days. Like they need to be in Milwaukee getting regular playing time, especially someone like LaRue who's a top 6 forward. So
you need an adult professional who can come off the bench at any moment to do any role you need. And that's what Jankowski can do.
That is Mark Jankowski.
Yeah,
like exactly. he's the consummate extra forward. Like I'm sure that's not the role he wants to be playing, but I'm sure
say that to his face, Emma.
But I'm saying it is a compliment.
I
it's a guy that you can rely on, that you can plug him in any night, wherever, whatever the situation, and you know what you're going to get from him.
And he's also the type of player that, while he would rather be playing, he's not going to sit there and bitch and moan while he's sitting on the bench. He's not getting playing time. He's going to still be the great teammate. He's going to be a good influence in the locker room. He's not someone like a Kyle Turris who's going to get benched and then goes to the media and complains about it the entire time. You're not going to have to worry about a distraction coming from Jankowski being benched than playing, every 2 weeks.
All right. Anything else from camp or lines or roster battles you guys want to touch on here? Power play, etc. I've got a couple of national notes about the Preds, just that kind of pertain to our conversation here. Also had a quick anecdote from Luke Schenn about Tanner Molendyk and some other stuff about pressure and expectations. We'll get to that coming up in just a second. Sinkers Beverages, though, however, is your spot for all your liquor store needs. Also non-alcoholic stuff as well as THC stuff, but they've got everything. Huge beer fridge. Every local beer you could possibly want is in there, so you can go check out their walk-in beer fridge. They've got a huge bourbon selection, and if you sign up for the in-crowd, you will absolutely get access to their allocations and their drops ahead of time before the public gets them, so make sure you sign up for the in-crowd. locally owned business supporting local communities in Nashville for almost 40 years. Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville is their sister store, serving the Hendersonville community for over 50 years now. So almost 100 years of service to Nashville. Go support a good local business. You can search Uber Eats and have them deliver the booze directly to your house or your tailgate party or wherever you are. I guess you could deliver the booze to your office. If you had an office downtown or in the Davidson County area, I suppose you could do that. If your office is okay with, buying beer for your employees, go for it, or if you need to stash something in your desk. I don't know. Is this
For
all bad?
All news
influence?
Organizations working on election night. Sinkers Beverages.
Yeah, exactly. Search Uber Eats, search Sinkers Beverages, have the booze delivered directly to your house. They will drive so you can drink, and of course, great wine selection with great knowledgeable folks up there who will help you like they help me every time I need a bottle of wine. I need help with the pairing and the taste and the profile and the cost and all that stuff, and I don't know anything about it. They help me out. So there you go. Prospect guide over on Lower Broad Hockey as well. The chat room is up and running and a lot of fun. We've got the new episode of the Gold Standard Extra, which is myself and Adam Vingan on Mondays. That's up there. Working on a way to get that distributed to you guys a little bit better. We got the Fantasy League coming up next week as well, so stay tuned for that. Hockey Fights Everyone might just be the name of the league now. Emma, I don't know if you want me to do that or not.
That's the name of my team. You can't name that the name of the league.
No, you're right. It's LBH. A couple of national notes here, just as that I noticed from ESPN. There was a list of sort of top regression candidates, and I thought this will be interesting to see because there's a lot of guys that had record seasons for the Preds last year, and Jonathan Marchessault is the only one on that list as a top regression candidate. Season or career high, almost 16% shooting percentage last year, 42 goals. A lot of projections for him around like the 32, 33, 34, 35 kind of goal mark. That would still be an excellent season. So I think it's okay to say.
Is going from 42 goals to 35 really that like a regression?
It's like a 20. It's like a 15 to 20% drop in production. So technically, by definition, Michael, it is. However, I don't think that's something anyone should be upset about. I don't.
So
think
if Philip Forsberg goes from 94 points to 90 points, are we calling that a regression?
Technically, it is. But the point is not that that's not the point. The point is if you get 33 goals out of a free agent or 35 goals out of a free agent who you're paying $5.5 million to, that's a win. That's a huge win and a huge success for the Predators. So if
you get 33 goals out of Marchessault, it would still be like the 4th or 5th best goal scoring season in franchise history. So I mean, come on.
Hey, it's down to like 8th or 9th now. They keep knocking that Victor Arvidsson season down every year. Who, by the way, was on the sleeper list too. I saw as I'm doing my fantasy hockey research for the draft coming up next week. You know who was listed though, and this speaks to our earlier conversation. Who was listed as a top sleeper fantasy draft pick, no longer in our league. Mr. Tommy Novak listed on that list, very high up on the list, and the quote was, should surpass 65 points with ease. That's no one in the Predators sweater has ever passed 65 points with ease. But here's my question about Novak, and I wanted to go back to this with you guys because I know Gover was floating this on It's All Your Fault that he was sick. I don't think that is that just speculation on Gover's part? I don't know. I always viewed Novak's struggles last year as two things. The end of a very long first major season in the NHL, like a real first major season where you have to play into the playoffs and you have to play a full season. And it just takes time sometimes for young players to do that. Not everybody can do what Luke Evangelista did. That it's about a time thing and about experience and about the grind and about having your body ready to go, that it wasn't about his overall ability or future success. And that it was more tied to the matchup and the situation than anything else. Do you guys have a sense that it's something else, like that it's like excuse is not the right word, but there was a reason why he played he struggled so much in that series, that he was sick or something? It seems like that's an unlikely answer, but I'm just curious, Emma.
Oh, I don't know if that was.
You were there in the conversation with Gover.
I was. No, I think it was speculation on his part, but informed speculation because there was something going around. Like a lot of guys were getting sick, so that's like certainly part of it. But I agree, like that that fatigue kind of sets in. It was his first like real full season at the NHL level. You know, it's going to catch up with you at some point. You hear it gets said a lot that, oh, it's a long season, 82 games, but like it really is. And like the fatigue does kind of set in at a certain point. And you don't really know when you're still that new to the league, you don't really know what your limit is until you hit it. And so it's part of how he's learning himself and learning his body and learning what he can handle. But yeah, I mean, I think that again, all informed speculation, but I think it could all be part of it.
Yeah, whether he was sick or not, I don't really think it matters. And this may sound cold-hearted to me, but I mean, Noah Lyles took third at the Olympics with COVID running. I mean, the athletes get through different things. Like if you have an illness, I don't really think that's an excuse. I think he may have been sick. I don't know if he was or not. I think it was more so Vancouver was bigger, stronger, and they bullied him around on the ice, and he needs to get into the weight room and he needs to bulk up. I do think I think part of the reason why he struggled during the regular season was just because he didn't have consistency. He played on 13 different lines last year of 10 or more minutes. That's a lot of different teammates and a lot of different line combinations for him and he was the anchor on most of those lines. So I think it's hard for Luka or for Tommy Novak to settle in and kind of get some consistency and some chemistry going when he constantly had his line mates changing. He was a second line center, then he was a third line winger. Like things just kind of moved around a lot. I think having the stability of knowing that Stamkos and Marchessault are going to be his line mates and he's going to be on the second line will do him a world of good.
Yeah, and I was thinking through, like, as I was listening to y'all, both in this answer and with you, Emma and Gover, it's like I'm thinking through my own analysis of his performance in the postseason, and it does, like, I never once thought, like, oh, this guy's clearly not good enough to be this position or whatever, and maybe that is either of your perspectives on this. It always felt like it was more, and if I didn't say this clearly at any point during the offseason, I that's where I'm sort of evaluating myself on this, which is that it just felt like it was more situationally driven. A little bit of locker rooms fatigued. He's personally fatigued. Never had this situation. Vancouver's a bad matchup, and he has to learn about what this situation's all about. And so I don't think it ever hit me that like this was the indicator that he's not the answer. Like, does that make sense? Like, not good enough or something like that. I don't think I ever felt that way. And if I didn't make that clear in our conversations, we probably should have done a better job. Like, we can say, hey, he wasn't very good in that series. Hey, he struggled in that series. Hey, it was. And also it not be a permanent indictment of what his future is going to be for the team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever Novak's not good enough, but it's not that he doesn't have the talent to be a good second line center, but make no mistake, like the second line is never going to be a threat because Tommy Novak is on it. He's someone that's going to go onto the second line and make it better, but he's never going to be the guy that makes it like the most feared line on the Predators.
Okay. All right. I want to play a clip from Michael McCarron yesterday, and I want to see major gaffe by the fourth line center, Michael McCarron. Major screw up. I can't believe it hasn't made national news. I can't believe it hasn't made national headlines. This is a big mistake by Michael McCarron. And the fact that other news outlets have not aggregated this is quite upsetting. I want to see if you two can pick out the mistake he makes. Major mistake that he makes in this conversation about becoming a father.
I mean, anyone who has a kid knows it's both the most exciting time in your life and the most very nerve-wracking as well. It's during the whole process, it's you just want to make sure both mom and baby are super healthy and everything's going smoothly. And when the doctors come in and rush in, you're just so helpless as a guy, just sitting there, seeing your wife go through what she's going through. And but now that it's all over, said and done with, I think it's a gift from God and a very exciting time in our lives.
You guys jump in and play.
Yeah. So we had the baby on the 14th. So I had a good week under my belt before I had a few days even before camp. So I'm happy that it came on time and I was able to get prepared for camp and put my best foot forward here.
All right. What big mistake did he make that should be grasping the internet's attention, but is not somehow? Did you guys pick up on it? This is not in your wheelhouse.
No, I don't know. He said now that's all done and over with. I don't know.
Major problem, Michael. When the baby is born, you cannot call it an it. Not allowed. Can't do that.
See, that's not how I interpreted that. I thought, because he said now that it's done, I think like the process, like childbirth, like
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It
that's
said
how
it
I
was.
took
I
it.
think he said it was born. The
I
only
thought
reason
he said it was done.
here's why this is funny to me. So me and my wife did not find out, and I don't know if Michael and his family found out or not about the boy or girl. We didn't find out for either of my two daughters. We did not find out if it was
Michael
a boy or girl.
McCarron, not me.
Yeah, right.
I was
point.
like, wait, are we breaking news right now?
Fair, good point. Good
No,
clarification.
my
there.
wife and I
Michael-
are not expecting anytime soon.
Michael McCarron did know ahead of time.
Okay, good clarity there. Sources indicate. No, we did not know, and in which case it's even worse. It's even worse mistake, Michael. We did not know, and so I had to call either each of our unborn children an it throughout the presidency, throughout the pregnancy. Jesus, easy for me to say anything today on the show. And I had to say it because we didn't know, and it was totally appropriate. Also, by the way, if you're anyone out there who's expecting or about or trying to have kids, like, don't find out the gender or don't tell anyone, because you will get so much more important stuff bought for you if everyone doesn't know what the sex is or the gender. As soon as they find out, everyone just buys the same shirt. And you don't need that many shirts. You need strollers, and you need car seats, and you need a lot of other shit. So don't tell anybody. Just small tip there. But my wife was so angry with me because I called it an it for 9 months. And then when my oldest was born, Marion was born, I kept calling it an it for a couple of weeks afterward. And she's like, stop calling her an it. It's a she. It's a her. And I was like, all right, come on, Michael. Still early in the stages.
See, that's still not
Anyway.
how I heard it.
He definitely said it.
Well, no, he did say it, but I don't think he was referring to his daughter. I think he was referring to the process of childbirth and pregnancy and all that.
Michael, if you're watching the show, comment and let us know what really happened.
Either way, starting a training camp, and I started morning radio the week like 3 weeks before my daughter was born too. Starting training camp a week after you became a dad, that's no joke, man. Or a mom, that's no joke.
He also did say
No
that
joke.
he did say that his wife was taking the night shift so that he could sleep and get prepared for camp, which shout out to Olivia McCarron, because that is
trooper.
Yeah, that is like, that is love. That is real commitment. That's
I did. So my wife did the same thing where like I would take the 8 p.m. to midnight shift, and then I would sleep for 4 hours, and then she did the overnight shift. Number one, I am incapable physically of feeding the child between midnight and 4 o'clock. Wife, that's what she's doing between midnight and 4 o'clock. And that was able that I could get up at 4 o'clock, feed the baby, and then get out of the house to go to to go do the show at 6 a.m. At the time. So it's not, you gotta divide and conquer the workflow there with the new baby and preseason hockey. A lot of stuff. So congratulations to the McCarron. That's great, man. And
what I love about what he said was he was like, yeah, I had about a week before camp to kind of get my bearings and stuff. Like that was him slowly like admitting like, yeah, that was the last week I'm ever going to sleep for the next
18 years.
Yeah.
You could see the wheels turning as he said it. He's like, oh yeah.
However, I would like to point out this Predators team, they have a habit of when there's a new dad, like they play their asses off for like a good stretch of time. So Michael McCarron, career year incoming, just throwing it out there. You heard it here first.
Philip Forsberg became a dad in the offseason. Ryan O'Reilly became a dad for the fourth time in the offseason. Yeah.
4 sounds crazy. 4 sounds crazy. Like
anything more than 2 sounds crazy. I don't want to be outnumbered by my children.
A table for 4 is so much easier to get than a table for 5. It just is. Every car fits 2 car seats. No cars fit 3 car seats. just so you know, 4 is a nice, easy round number. We're very happy with it. We always joke, if we had unlimited time and resources, we would have as many kids as possible. But nobody has either of those 2 things, even professional hockey players. So
my brother-in-law and his family just had their 4th kid, and they're talking about maybe adopting one too. Like how people have the bandwidth for that, I don't understand.
Look, my wife is one of 4, and she's always wanted more. But there was a worldwide pandemic and a tornado and hit our daycare and a bombing, and I was out of there was a lot of reasons we had to cut it off at 4. But again, a table for 4, don't have to buy a new house or a new car. It's nice round number. Congrats to Forsberg and O'Reilly and McCarron and all those guys. Quickly here, an anecdote. I'm writing a story off this, so I'll have you guys some stuff on this in a little while. A lot of it's going to be about expectations and pressure and how do these guys all handle it in a very different locker room this year going into this season than they've had in a long, long time for this organization. But ultimately, I had to ask Luke Schenn about Tanner Molendyk because I'd heard a story that like Luke Schenn was just in awe of Tanner Molendyk during drills during rookie camp both last year and this year. And so I said, hey, can I hear about what it's like going through drills with Tanner Molendyk? Do you guys have any stories to tell? And he goes immediately into a story about how they're all doing this drill in camp. And it is all the veterans. It's Josi, it's Lozon, it's Carrier, it's Fabro, it's Shea, it's Schenn. They're all in this drill. And it's sort of designed to give the offense a little bit of a leg up. So it's like kind of it's a skating drill in the defensive zone where you got to tag up from red line to blue line and kind of chase down the puck and chase down a forward. So it's just to be fair, the drill is designed to benefit the offense, is what he was telling me. And he goes, every single one of us was getting roasted. That's a verbatim quote. Every single one of a professional NHL defenseman was getting roasted by this drill. And I look over and I see this kid looks like he's skating around on top of the ice, not even trying hard and doing the drill perfectly. And he goes, I ask, and they said, that's our first round pick. That's Tanner Molendyk. And it's just to hear an anecdote from a professional hockey player who's like, we're all struggling at this. We can't do, and you can all envision some of the defensemen in the Preds defense corps maybe not being able to be as fleet of foot in a drill. And Tanner Molendyk just out there, just bebopping around, having a good time, managing a drill. We know he's a great skater, but to hear other defensemen speak effusively and give effusive praise of his skating ability and his talent. He was like, I think he ended the quote with basically like, man, it looks like we got a really good one, like a sneaky good one there at the end of the first round. So just some high praise from some professionals about my guy, Tanner Molendyk.
So what I heard was Tanner Molendyk is going to win the Calder Trophy this year. That's what I heard.
Next year, maybe. Yeah. Next year.
And he's going to quarterback the second power play unit.
He's actually going to quarterback the second power play from Milwaukee this year.
Yes.
Or from I guess actually be somewhere else. Saskatoon, right? Is where he'll be.
From Saskatoon.
Saskatoon. Hard to score goals from there. No, it was I had heard this story and I just wanted to confirm it from him. And sure enough, he it's a pretty good anecdote, I thought. It just like the way people talk about the defensemen on this organization talk about his skating ability. It all lines up with what we think about him. So
and if you have some free time and you're a fan, go out to Bellevue, go watch Tanner Molendyk in person. You're not gonna be disappointed. Even though they're doing drills that don't matter, he is so much fun to watch.
So he and Andrew Gibson got a lot of extra time on Tuesday with Andrew Burnett. I think it's pretty clear that they are grooming these two to be the next top pairing, either number 2 pairing behind Josi and Shea. But like it's clear that they are invested in these two in a very big way. And I think they're going to give them, to our conversation earlier about Tomasino and Novak and putting these guys in good positions to succeed. I think they're going to give Gibson and Molendyk a lot of attention and nurturing and development. And I think that's the right strategy. And I think they could be up here sooner rather than later as a defense pairing, probably 2 years from now, I would say. Not this season, not next season, but maybe a third season from now, the two of them could be penciled into the starting lineup potentially. I don't think it's that crazy.
Yeah, I think 2026 is probably a good jumping off point. I think Molendyk is on the roster next season in 2025. I think Gibson might take a little bit longer, but not much. So I think that's probably a good target date. I think they'll work well together because, I mean, you got Molendyk who's shifty, who's quick, who can keep up with anybody. He does a lot of great things. And then you have Gibson, who's more of your typical stay-at-home defenseman, a big body, lays the hits. And I hate comparing them.
Do it.
I hate comparing them to Ryan Ellis and Shea Weber, but that's immediately where my mind goes because we had over a decade of watching those guys on the ice, and that's immediately who I think of. I think Tanner Molendyk,
Ryan Suter, and Shea Weber.
No, I think Tanner Molendyk is his skill set is a better comp to Ryan Ellis because they play a similar game.
Okay.
But I think that Molendyk has more of an offensive upside than Ellis did. But I think Gibson with his size, his frame, just the way he plays his game is tailored to kind of how Shea Weber played.
I don't know,
Gibson told us that his ironically that Ryan Ellis was his favorite player his first favorite player growing up.
Ellis had a pretty nasty slap shot from the point. He could shoot the puck. So Ellis is one of my as a hockey person, I enjoyed watching Ryan Ellis play as much as anybody else on that 2017-2018 team. And talking about Novak earlier with the how exhausting the playoff run gets. If you ever walk into a locker room on a team that is playing in their 4th playoff series of the season, you will never see human beings look more like sunken. Like I walked in and saw Ryan Ellis and he looked pale. His eyes were like sunk in his head. He had bags under his, like it is the amount of toll it takes on the human body to play a 4th playoff series after an 82 game season is, maybe the end of an NFL season. Like, I don't know what else is comparable to the amount of stress you put on your body. Like, I'll never forget walking in and seeing Ryan Ellis's face after like whatever it was, 20 playoff games. Like, whoa, dude, you gonna be okay? He also had a major knee injury that series too.
It's kind of how they all looked after the 3 overtime game against the Sharks, and it was in 2015, 2016. Like walking into that locker room, like I remember going in there and Mike Fisher could barely lift his head up to talk to us because that's how exhausted these guys were. And
probably a major head injury for Mike Fisher as well during that playoff series run. Okay. That about does it for us. Thank you guys all for being here and commenting. Anything else you guys want to add? Where can people find you? Where can they get to you? Where can they interact? Obviously, lowerbroadhockey.com is the website. Sinkers Beverages, rate, review, subscribe, all that great stuff. Where can the good folks find you guys and what y'all are working on?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan, and you can find my weekly Friday newsletter on the NHL at Lower Broad Hockey.
You can find me on Twitter at MGSports_, all my written work at Lower Broad Hockey. I'm hoping to speak to a couple guys Thursday at camp, so hopefully I might have a preview, not really a preview, I guess a breakdown of what a Tomasino, Evangelista, Sissons third line could look like.
Ooh, that's tantalizing. Gallagher. I like that. Good stuff there. Appreciate you guys. Did you guys notice that I got the show intro fixed on YouTube?
You did.
I did.
No more playoffs.
We're no longer talking about the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs. I got it fixed. I finally got it fixed for you guys.
We just lost a huge part of our YouTube audience in Canada.
Yes, we're huge in BC. All right. Well, thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you guys for commenting, rate, review, subscribe, thumbs up, all that great stuff. Follow Michael, follow Emma. You can get to me at Braden Gall as well. Lower Broad Hockey, everybody. Go sign up, subscribe. I guarantee you it's going to be worth it. Otherwise, thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. And we'll talk to you guys next week.